Hi, I'm Renee Stevens.
And I'm Krillin Stevens, and
we're Justice for Kadira.
And welcome back to our program. We're sorry we haven't gotten a video out in a while, but we felt like it was really important to make a video today in light of everything that's happened here in this country at the Capitol building. So tonight we won't necessarily be getting,
back to our story. We'd like to talk about what has occurred in terms of how it relates to our circumstance.
One of the things that I think that it's important to reiterate is that we have been fighting for our daughter peacefully for, it'll be 14 years this April 12th, 2021.
Now, we understand that sometimes when you're fighting for justice, you need to have patience. The process to get justice, it may take a long time. A lot of times it's not instantaneous, but that doesn't mean that it's okay to resort to violence.
And that's something that I think is a difficult pill for people to swallow, because we see violence modeled by the leadership all the time. They take us to war, they leave people dying in the streets. We are not being led by people who disavow violence like we heard on the television today.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our leaders came out to act like, violence is never the answer. Well, in fact, when people are violent, that's what gets them all the attention.
True.
And that's one of the issues that we've really grappled with over the last, 13 and a half, close to 14 years, is we never get any press because we're not violent people.
Yeah, nobody ever pays any attention to us because we're not going out there and committing some kind of violent act, destroying anything, hurting anybody. All of our fight has been in the courts, and now it's here trying to get, attention from the public. But that's really hard to do because, once again, we're peaceful people,
and we're being buried by the media. I think that it's important for every American, especially right now, to understand that the leadership is inviting us to violence. The leadership wants us to be violent, because when we resort to violence, then they come back and they say, hey, we have the moral authority. We need to show you how to behave. And so
now
everybody that went out today and was behaving violently, has put all of us in an even more precarious situation.
Now, there were lots of peaceful protesters, but unfortunately, their message was undermined by the actions of a few,
and by the violence which the media, immediately
focuses on.
But as you can see, with what's happening to us and what happened to our daughter, the media, they're not going to cover this because we're not being violent. And they don't necessarily, well, I would say they don't want people to model that behavior. What they want is the violence, so then they have more and more control.
Yes, and that leaves them with more and more control. And as a matter of fact, the more violent we get, the more control they have over us, which is one thing that I believe has frustrated them with us, because when they brought us to trial, this was to inflict severe emotional distress. This courtroom, what happened in this courtroom, first of all, it wasn't a real trial.
It was absolutely outrageous what they put us through. I mean, these people stood on the stand and went up to the stand and said, yes, we got your daughter naked. Yes, we burned her. And
no, we're not responsible.
And no, we're not responsible. And then, of course, we had 12 white people laugh
we could hear them laughing from the deliberation room.
Right. We could all the way into the courtroom. We could hear them laughing, loud laughing after looking at pictures of our burned up daughter.
Then
so
the head juror came out and handed the judge the verdict, and it was just, were they guilty in the way that was described in the trial? And it was just a no. So
no negligence at all. So we've felt the white hot anger. I can't even describe the feeling that day. So I understand what it means to feel disenfranchised and what it feels like to feel like your voice is not being heard. Me and my husband, as we pursued our daughter's case against these people and the other people who were involved in covering it up, we were slapped down repeatedly.
Every single time we went before a judge, every single time we went to another agency, they just basically told us to go away.
But we would not be here today continuing this battle if we had resorted to violence.
Violence would have found us in jail or dead, possibly.
And it would have ripped apart our family. And because we didn't resort to violence, we were still here to raise our children. We're still here
to fight this fight.
We're still here speaking up about government corruption. And government corruption absolutely must be addressed. People need to start taking it seriously.
Because it's happening.
And
we witnessed it firsthand. We see it happening in the government right now. There was a lot of claims of voter fraud. I believe it. There's a lot of...
or at least it needs to be looked into. Who's to say? Maybe there was voter fraud, maybe there wasn't. But there's no reason why the leadership couldn't have provided, a televised process where we saw what these people were presenting or not presenting, just so people could actually work through their issues.
Yes.
Without feeling like they needed to resort to violence. Because I can say for us, I think one of the most frustrating things was filing, and we did file evidence.
We filed all kinds of evidence, and that really means that when you file evidence and facts are at issue, a trial is necessary to determine the facts that a court case will be used to determine a verdict. So the problem with us and why it was so frustrating was the courts never looked at any of our evidence. There was no trial to determine the facts.
No, and in fact, when our last complaint was thrown out and we were banned from ever filing another lawsuit in the courts again, the judge threw the whole thing out based on the alleged burns of our daughter, which was proven. We had filed proof of that. There was testimony from the perpetrators. We filed the very scant medical records, but we filed all of that.
We filed pictures of her burn.
Right. So we can't have this kind of corruption happening in our courts, and this is a daily problem. The corruption happened in our case, but the corruption's happening in a lot of other cases, and it's possible. Of course, it's possible that
there was voter fraud. And maybe, just maybe, there wasn't enough voter fraud to change or to redetermine the outcome of the election. But that doesn't mean that the evidence should not have been looked at. Because if there are problems that exist in our judicial process, in our political process,
in our voting process, any of it,
any of that stuff, it needs to be critically looked at, because how else can we fix the problems without knowing that they exist, first of all, and then seeing how it happened. So it's not just that the courts took these claims and tossed them out without really looking at what the evidence was that they were claiming. It's just that basically they are undermining our democratic process.
Yeah, people need to feel heard. And I know what it feels like to not feel heard, because me and my husband haven't really been heard for years. And, I mean, we still basically are struggling very hard to get our story out there, because what the media doesn't cover, you know, just basically they can just make things not exist.
Yeah.
And so it's not difficult for us to believe that there may have been some hanky-panky or some fraud, because there was all kinds of fraud in our case in particular. And I'm hooked up in a support group with other parents who have had their children actually taken from by CPS, and I'm hearing a lot of stories of claims of fraud in their cases, in terms of how the judges are handling these cases. And honestly, right now, what I believe our judicial system needs is we need to get rid of judicial immunity. That's got to go. Because if a judge is, you know, purposely, intentionally engaging in wrongdoing, they have to go. And secondly, we need like a system sort of like what is set up in the stores when people get cashiers and the like, they get secret shopped. Well, that needs to start happening in our courts.
Yeah, there needs to be a serious, critical auditing process as judicial decisions are being made. And far more than the judges who are deciding the cases, far more eyes need to be on each case other than 12 people and a judge. That's obviously, that is not, because in our case, all the people were white, and we were two brown people sitting in there. We were the only ones sitting in the courtroom, and everybody could see that we were brown, and everybody on the jury was white. And basically what went into play was the policy of white is right. That's an ideology that is widely used here in the state of Oregon. And it just means that white people, whenever any kind of dispute comes up between a white person and a black person, no matter how egregious it is, it's not critical thinking or rational thinking that determines the outcome. It's what the color of the person's skin is. And that's not okay.
Yeah, and I mean, in our case, I mean, it was absolutely egregious, because, I mean, our child was, you know, seriously injured and abused, and
there was no justice for her.
Right. And we're still seeking justice. We're still here seeking justice. So I just think it was important to talk about what happened here today. We still do not agree that violence is the answer. I think we need to start having some real critical conversations. And it's important for people, I think, to start examining what happened in our case. I tweeted all the documents today on our Twitter, which is Justice for Kadira. And so it's 551 pages of evidence that we filed, and legal documents. So a whole lot of something happened here, and I'm sure that there are a lot of other cases where a lot of fraud has occurred.
And it's just not being dealt with. It's not being looked at.
It's not even being talked about in the media, which is very concerning. I mean, right now they're just acting like, you know, when they don't want to deal with something, it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, they turn it into conspiracy theory.
Which we've been, you know, I've had that accusation thrown at me many times. Oh, you're just, you know, peddling conspiracy theories. What happened to Kadira, what happened to our daughter, is not a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy. They're plain facts displayed all over the internet.
Right. And if the government wanted to come out and say something about it, they most certainly could. But they know it's true, and they know there's no explanation for it. So if there's no explanation for this, there may not be an explanation for a lot of things that are going on in our justice system and in our political system. So it's important that we examine these things, but it's also important that we remain peaceful, because if we do not remain peaceful,
we will lose our ability to actually make real change.
Right. Because what's going to happen is they're just going to put the iron fist down. And I heard it today. I heard the words domestic terrorism, you know, I heard the words thugs and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's I will say it was not a good scene at the Capitol today.
Not at all.
all. That is
completely unacceptable.
Right. That is not how you deal with your problems. But I'm also going to say that the corruption in our government is real, and I think that people are frustrated. But we have to learn to work our problems out using our
democratic process.
Our voices. Words. But we also have to start listening to other people than the people in charge, because they have no problem voting for big, huge wars. They have no problem, throwing $600 at suffering people, when right now we basically have people in this country dying in the streets. So we've got some serious issues to work out, and I'm hoping that you're going to return to this channel and, help us really start bringing this conversation.
Yeah, because this is not just about what happened to Kadira. This is about looking at the process of how it happened to her.
Right.
And fixing the problems or the huge red flags that exist in our governmental process, all the way, not just our government though, because it was prevalent in the healthcare system. So
it was prevalent in every agency we went to, and we went to a lot of agencies. If you look
for help, and we were trying to get help.
Right. If you look at all the paperwork we filed, if you read my book, then you begin to understand we pretty much went everywhere looking for help, and there was no government to be found. So,
or any agency that was supposed to help Kadira.
And that's all the agencies on this planet, in this country, should be set up to do, is to service people and protect people. And that's not what's happening. No. When wrongdoing happens, they just cover it up and pretend like the agency is still, a place that we should go for help. So there's no checks and balances, there's no accountability, and that definitely has to stop.
Yeah, and now we're stuck sitting here thinking, even though all of this mayhem happened at the Capitol, there was no pause on the democratic process. These people got up, the entire Congress got up and condemned everything that happened and said, we're going to move forward, we're just going to charge through this, and these people really didn't matter. And that's the wrong message.
That's dangerous.
That is a very dangerous message.
Right. What's going to happen tomorrow? Because my husband and I were pacifists, but these people were not pacifists. So does this get worse for us tomorrow? Do we start seeing explosions in the streets? Do we start seeing, open warfare in this country? Because that is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, that's the path that all this violence is headed towards.
I mean, we hire these people to help talk out our problems and help us resolve our differences. And all they've done, and all they've done is make those differences, more stark, and they haven't helped us resolve any of our issues. And
as a matter of fact...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
As a matter of fact, our government has been antagonizing us and its own people. So how does that help? The people cannot be villainized here. Our voices should matter.
Right. I want to say, too, that they definitely antagonized our family. I mean, every single time they refused to give us any answers about what happened to our daughter, what happened to my husband's job at Nike. It was maddening. And
it was extremely frustrating. Frustrating enough for us to want to go out and commit some kind of violent act.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely felt like that. It's just that is not our way. And we don't believe in the long run that would have been helpful. So
not for Kadira,
not
not for us, and not for this country.
So anyways, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking more about our story, and we're going to be talking more about these issues. If you can join us down in the square at Pioneer Square.
Pioneer Courthouse Square.
We'll be there every Friday.
In downtown Portland, Oregon.
Yes, we'll be there every Friday hosting a peaceful event where we are hoping that people will come so we can start talking about what is going wrong with our government and how we can fix it in a meaningful way so that we can all get back to the business of living our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.